The emergency broadcast crackled through the communication arrays of every civilized world within 3 sectors. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Republic stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session, her blue-scaled hands trembling as she clutched the datapad containing their world's final hope. "Honored members of the Council," she began, her voice carrying the weight of desperation that had driven her people to this moment. "The Zephyrian Republic formally requests immediate humanitarian assistance. Our homeworld faces complete ecological collapse within 60 standard rotations." The assembled delegates shifted uncomfortably in their biopods and atmosphere suits. The Zephyrians had always been a proud species, their crystal cities and floating gardens the envy of dozens of worlds. To see them reduced to begging sent ripples of unease through the chamber. Council Speaker Mordain, a towering hegemony representative with 4 arms and silver skin, activated his translator implant. "Ambassador Kethvar, please elaborate on the nature of this crisis. Our preliminary report suggests solar radiation fluctuations affecting your agricultural sectors." Kethvar's throat sacs inflated with stress. "It began as radiation fluctuations, yes, but our star has entered an unstable phase. The radiation bursts are increasing in frequency and intensity. Our atmospheric processors cannot compensate anymore. Crop yields have dropped by 80%. Our water purification systems are failing. We estimate complete biosphere collapse within 2 months." She paused, gathering courage for what came next. "We need immediate evacuation assistance for our population of 400 million beings. We also require temporary colony ships and terraforming equipment to establish emergency settlements on 3 candidate worlds we have identified." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. 400 million refugees represented the largest displacement crisis in galactic history. The logistics alone were staggering. Councillor Vexthul of the Mineral Consortium spoke first, his rocky features grating together. "The scale of this request is unprecedented. Our combined civilian transport capacity could evacuate perhaps 50 million beings over 6 months. Even pooling resources from every member world." "We understand the magnitude," Kethvar interrupted, a breach of protocol that showed her desperation. "We are prepared to offer our entire technological database, including our biomanipulation technologies and crystal matrix sciences. We will indenture ourselves as a client species to any civilization willing to provide the necessary aid." The offer sent shockwaves through the assembly. The Zephyrians possess some of the most advanced biotechnology in known space. Their willingness to surrender their independence spoke volumes about their situation. Councillor Hyren of the Peaceful Union leaned forward in her flower-like chair. "Even if we accepted such terms, the timeline is impossible. Our most optimistic projections show evacuation taking at least 8 months, assuming perfect coordination between 37 different species with incompatible technologies." "There must be something," Kethvar pleaded, her scales shifting to deep purple with distress. "Our children, our elders, they cannot survive another major radiation burst. Our medical facilities are already overwhelmed treating radiation sickness." Speaker Mordain called for a brief recess. As delegates huddled in their species-specific groups, whispered conversations filled the chamber. The mathematics were cruel but simple. No combination of existing galactic resources could mount an evacuation of this scale in time. When the session resumed, the verdict was written on every face in the room. Speaker Mordain stood slowly, his forearms spread in a gesture of helplessness. "Ambassador Kethvar, the Council has reviewed all possible scenarios. We can offer immediate medical supplies and enough transport capacity to evacuate approximately 60 million of your people. Priority would be given to your young and your genetic preservation protocols. The implication hung in the air like poison. 340 million Zephyrians would die." Kethvar's legs nearly gave out. She had known this might be the answer, but hearing it spoken aloud felt like ice in her veins. "And if we were to approach non-council members? The independent worlds?" Councillor Vexthul's rocky surface shifted in what might have been sympathy. "The Andromedans lack the fleet capacity. The Void Dwellers do not involve themselves in biological affairs. The free colonies are too scattered to coordinate such an effort. As for the others," he paused, "well, there are the humans." A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Several delegates activated their protective barriers reflexively. "The humans are not even a spacefaring civilization by our standards," Councillor Hyren objected. They have barely established permanent settlements beyond their home system. What could they possibly offer? Speaker Mordane's expression was troubled. Intelligence reports suggest they have been expanding rapidly. Very rapidly, and their response to the Kethari crisis last year was significant. Kethvar had heard whispers about the Kethari incident. A small colony world had been overrun by mechanical harvester drones from a dead civilization. The Galactic Council had been debating intervention for weeks when the drones suddenly went silent. Later investigation revealed every single harvester had been destroyed by unknown forces using crude but devastatingly effective weapons. You are suggesting we contact a species that has not even been formally evaluated for council membership? Kethavar asked. I am suggesting, Speaker Mordane replied carefully, that desperate times may call for desperate measures. The humans have shown a remarkable capacity for rapid mobilization when faced with crisis scenarios. However, I must warn you that their methods are often unconventional. Counselor Vexathol added grimly, they originate from what our xenobiologists classify as a Class 12 death world. Their approach to problem-solving tends to be rather direct. Keithvar felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. Class 12 death worlds produce species with extraordinary survival capabilities and resource management skills. If the humans had achieved spaceflight despite their hostile environment, they might possess exactly the kind of innovative thinking needed for an impossible evacuation. How do we contact them? She asked. Speaker Mordane hesitated. Their primary colony world maintains a diplomatic station. But Ambassador, I must stress that approaching the humans means stepping outside established protocols. The Council cannot officially sanction or support any arrangement you might reach with them. Understood, Kethvar replied without hesitation. I will depart immediately. As the emergency session dissolved into worried murmurs, Kethvar was already composing her message to the Zephyrian High Command. She would not tell them about the Council's grim mathematics or the impossible odds. Instead, she would tell them that she had found a new option. A species that might think differently about impossible problems. She had no idea that within 72 hours, her simple request for aid would trigger the largest military mobilization in human history. The human diplomatic station orbiting Kepler 442c was nothing like what Ambassador Kethvar had expected. Instead of the elegant bioorganic structures favored by most spacefaring civilizations, the station resembled a collection of metal boxes, welded together with obvious utility in mind. Docking bays bristled with angular ships that looked more like weapons than vehicles. Administrator Sarah Chen met Kethvar at the airlock, her plain gray uniform a stark contrast to the ornate diplomatic robes worn by most species. She was smaller than Kethvar had anticipated, barely reaching the Zephyrian's shoulder, but her dark eyes held an intensity that made the ambassador unconsciously step back. Ambassador Kethvar, Chen said in accented but clear galactic standard. Your emergency transmission mentioned a humanitarian crisis requiring immediate assistance. Please follow me. The interior of the station was equally utilitarian. Corridors lined with exposed conduits and flickering displays led to a briefing room that contained only a metal table, basic chairs, and a large holographic projector. No ceremonial elements, no comfort amenities that usually marked diplomatic spaces. Forgive the sparse accommodations, Chen said, gesturing to a chair. We built this station for function, not diplomacy. Can I offer you anything? Water, nutrient supplements? Kethavar settled into the human-sized chair with some difficulty. Thank you, no. Administrator Chen, I must be direct. My people are facing extinction, and the Galactic Council has determined that saving them is logistically impossible. Chen's expression didn't change, but she leaned forward slightly. Tell me about it. For the next 20 minutes, Kethvar laid out the crisis in detail. Solar instability, radiation poisoning, ecological collapse, 400 million lives hanging in the balance. She shared atmospheric readings, population distribution data, and the Council's evacuation projections. Throughout her presentation, Chen asked pointed technical questions that revealed a surprisingly deep understanding of large-scale logistics. When Kethvar finished, Chen sat back and was quiet for nearly a full minute. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Administrator, Kethvar ventured, I understand this is an enormous request. The Council estimated it would require the combined resources of 37 different civilizations working in perfect coordination. Chen nodded slowly. The Council's assessment is accurate for their capabilities and methodologies. May I ask why you approached us instead of the Andromedans or the Void Dwellers? Kethvar's throat sacs deflated slightly. Because they also lack the necessary capacity. Humans were suggested as a species that might approach impossible problems differently. I see. Chen stood and walked to the holographic projector. Computer, display current Sol fleet deployment status. The projector flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of human space. Kethvar gasped. When the Galactic Council had last assessed human expansion, they controlled perhaps a dozen systems. The map now showed over 300 star systems with active human presence, connected by a web of shipping lanes and communication relays. This data must be incorrect, Kethvar said weakly. Updated as of this morning, Chen replied. We've been busy. Computer, show current fleet composition. New symbols appeared throughout the map. Thousands upon thousands of ships, from massive industrial vessels to sleek destroyers. The scale was staggering. Chen touched a control, highlighting a cluster of systems near human core worlds. These are our logistics fleets. We've learned that in space, supply lines are everything. Each of those vessels can carry between 50,000 and 200,000 passengers in emergency configuration. Kethvar's scales shifted to bright yellow with shock. That's enough capacity for our entire population. Potentially, yes, but capacity is only part of the equation. Chen brought up detailed specifications for the human ships. Our vessels were designed for hostile environments and emergency operations. They lack many amenities that other species consider essential. The journey to suitable colony worlds would take 3 to 4 months in cramped conditions. My people will endure any hardship to survive, Kethvar said quickly. Chen nodded. I believe you. But there are other considerations. Moving our logistics fleets to your system would require pulling them from dozens of colony worlds that depend on regular supply runs. We would essentially be shutting down human expansion for 6 months to a year. Kethvar felt her hope beginning to crumble. I see, so even with the capacity, I didn't say we wouldn't do it, Chen interrupted. I'm explaining what it would cost us. The question is whether we're willing to pay that price. She activated her communication implant. Priority connection to Admiral Harrison. Sol Defense Command. The hologram shifted to show a grizzled human male in military uniform sitting in what appeared to be a command center. His gray hair and scarred face spoke of extensive combat experience. Sarah, the Admiral said without preamble. I'm guessing this is about the Zephyrian situation. Intel picked up the Galactic Council's emergency session yesterday. It is. We have Ambassador Kethvar here requesting immediate evacuation assistance for 400 million civilians. Time frame is approximately 60 days. Admiral Harrison whistled low. That's the entire Sol Logistics Corps plus pulling ships from the Colonial Defense Fleet. We'd be looking at Operation Neptune scale deployment. Kethvar didn't understand the reference, but Chen's expression suggested it was significant. Can it be done? Chen asked. Technically, yes, the infrastructure exists, but it would mean halting all colonial supply runs, recalling the deep survey fleets, and converting half our military transports to passenger configuration. We're talking about the largest humanitarian operation in human history. Chen looked at Kethvar. Ambassador, I need to ask you something important. What exactly are the Zephyrians prepared to offer in exchange for this assistance? Kethvar straightened, calling on her diplomatic training. Our entire technological database, including biomanipulation technologies that could revolutionize medicine and agriculture. Our crystal matrix sciences could advance your computing capabilities by decades. We also offer ourselves as a client species, with all the obligations that entails. Admiral Harrison and Chen exchanged a look that seemed to communicate volumes. Ambassador, Chen said carefully, humans don't take client species. We don't believe in indentured servitude or technological slavery. If we help you, it's because we think it's the right thing to do, not because we want to own you. Then what would you want in return? Kethvar asked, confused. Chen smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Partnership. Technical exchange between equals. Maybe help with some projects we've been working on. And honestly, the logistics challenge interests us. We've never tried to evacuate an entire planet before. Admiral Harrison chuckled. Sarah, you're starting to sound like an engineer again. I am an engineer, Chen replied. Which is why I think we can pull this off. Admiral, what's your assessment? Harrison was quiet for a moment. Then his expression grew determined. Ambassador Kethvar, if we do this, we do it the human way. Fast, direct, and with overwhelming force. We don't negotiate with impossible odds, we smash them. But I need to know something first. What is that? Kethvar asked. Are your people prepared to trust their lives to a species they've never met? Because once we start moving, there's no going back. We'll have every available ship in human space heading for your world within a week. Kethvar felt tears forming in her eyes. Admiral, my people are dying. We will trust anyone willing to help us live. Harrison nodded grimly. Then consider it done. Sarah, initiate Operation Exodus. Full mobilization. Code Priority Alpha. As alarms began sounding throughout the station, Kethvar realized she had just witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. An entire civilization mobilizing for strangers not for conquest or profit, but simply because it was right. The human fleet began arriving at Zephyr Prime 18 days after Ambassador Kethvar's meeting with Administrator Chen. She had expected a modest task force, perhaps a dozen ships that would attempt a partial evacuation. What emerged from hyperspace defied every assumption about human capabilities. The first wave consisted of massive industrial vessels, each one larger than anything in the Zephyrian Navy. Their hulls were scarred and utilitarian, bearing the marks of countless cargo runs through hostile space. Behind them came sleek military escorts, their weapon systems powered but not targeted, broadcasting continuous identification signals to avoid any misunderstandings. High Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Defense Force watched the arriving fleet from his command station, his normally composed demeanor cracking under the sheer magnitude of what he was witnessing. Navigation, how many vessels have emerged so far? 237, sir. And they're still coming. Indeed, ships continued to drop out of hyperspace in carefully coordinated waves. Transport vessels, medical ships, engineering platforms, mobile refineries, and support craft of every description. Each one immediately moved to assigned coordinates with military precision. Veltar opened a communication channel to the lead human vessel, a massive ship designated as the UHS Concordia. Human vessels, this is High Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Defense Force. Please identify your intentions. The response came from a human female with short gray hair and Admiral's insignia. High Commander Veltar, this is Admiral Catherine Harrison, commanding Operation Exodus. We're here to evacuate your people, all of them. Veltar stared at the tactical display showing the human fleet. Admiral, our intelligence suggested human space assets were limited. This fleet represents more tonnage than most galactic powers possess. Harrison's expression was matter of fact. Commander, when humans commit to something, we commit completely. We've pulled ships from across human space for this operation. Every available transport, every logistics vessel, and enough military escorts to ensure safe passage. The scale is unprecedented, Veltar admitted. How many people can you evacuate? 412 million, Harrison replied without hesitation. We brought extra capacity in case your population estimates were conservative. The number hit Veltar like a physical blow. The humans had planned to save not just the confirmed population, but every possible Zephyrian who might need rescue. Admiral, I must ask how you've achieved such rapid mobilization. Our own military would require months to coordinate such an operation. Harrison smiled grimly. Commander, we come from a world where hurricanes, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions are routine events. We've been practicing mass evacuation since before we left our homeworld. The scale is different, but the principles are the same. Over the next 6 hours, Veltar watched the humans deploy with stunning efficiency. Mobile command centers established orbital coordination networks. Engineering ships began constructing temporary space stations to serve as staging areas. Medical vessels positioned themselves to handle the inevitable health issues that would arise during such a massive population movement. Most impressive were the human logistics protocols. Instead of the careful bureaucratic processes favored by galactic civilizations, the humans operated with ruthless pragmatism. Families were processed in groups, medical needs assessed and addressed immediately, and personal belongings limited to what could fit in standardized containers. Commander Veltar, Admiral Harrison called. We need to discuss the evacuation timeline. Our meteorological analysis confirms your star's instability pattern. We have approximately 57 days before the next major radiation burst. Veltar accessed his latest scientific reports. That matches our projections. But Admiral, Evacuating 400 million people in less than 60 days will require running 3 shifts around the clock with minimal downtime, Harrison finished. We've done the math. Each transport can process approximately 20,000 people per day using our emergency protocols. With 212 transports operating continuously, we can complete the evacuation in 48 days. What about supplies? Food, water, medical care during transport? Harrison gestured to her tactical display, highlighting dozens of support vessels. We brought our own supply chain, mobile food processing plants, water reclamation systems, medical facilities, even manufacturing capability to produce anything we might need. This isn't our first emergency operation, Commander. Veltar felt a mixture of amazement and curiosity. Admiral, if I may ask, what drives your people to such extraordinary efforts for strangers? Your government will spend enormous resources with no guaranteed return. Harrison was quiet for a moment. Then her expression softened slightly. Commander, let me tell you about something that happened on our homeworld. A few centuries ago, there was a massive earthquake in a region called Haiti. Within hours, humans from around the globe were mobilizing rescue efforts. Ships, aircraft, medical teams, supplies, billions in aid money. All for people most of the rescuers had never met. She paused, looking out at the Zephyrian homeworld visible on the view screen. Someone asked one of the rescue coordinators why humans were spending so much to help strangers. His answer was simple: because they need help and we can provide it. That's all the justification we've ever needed. Veltar's throat sacs contracted with emotion. Your species is remarkable. We're stubborn, Harrison corrected. When we see a problem, we solve it. When someone needs help, we help them. It's not always the smart thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. The communication alert interrupted their conversation. A new voice, speaking rapid galactic standard with obvious excitement, filled the channel. Admiral Harrison, this is Dr. Marcus Webb, Chief Xenobiologist aboard the UHS Mendel. We've completed our preliminary analysis of Zephyrian physiology and environmental requirements. I have some recommendations for transport modifications. Go ahead, Dr. Webb, Harrison replied. The Zephyrians require higher humidity levels than standard human atmospheric systems provide. Their scale structure also makes them sensitive to certain synthetic materials common in our ship interiors. I recommend installing bio-friendly atmospheric processors and replacing standard seating with organic composite materials. Veltar was stunned. Doctor, those modifications would take weeks to implement across your entire fleet. Actually, Webb replied cheerfully, our engineering teams began the modifications yesterday, as soon as we received the Zephyrian biological data. We'll have the first 50 transports ready for passenger loading within 12 hours. Admiral Harrison noticed Veltar's expression. Dr. Webb, please explain to the commander how we can modify hundreds of ships so quickly. Oh, that's simple, Webb said. We designed our transport systems for modular configuration. Swapping out atmospheric processors takes about 4 hours per ship. The seating modifications are even faster since we use standardized mounting systems. We learned during the Kepler colony crisis that flexibility is essential for emergency operations. Veltar was beginning to understand something profound about human civilization. They didn't just have advanced technology or superior logistics. They had systematically prepared for the impossible, building their entire society around the assumption that catastrophic emergencies would occur regularly. Admiral, he said slowly, your people have done this before? Not on this scale, Harrison admitted. But yes, we've evacuated entire planets. The Kepler colony when their sun went nova. The mining worlds in the Vega system when the harvester drones attacked. The research stations in the Centauri Nebula when that reality distortion field appeared. She smiled at his shocked expression. Commander, in human space, disasters are opportunities to practice. We don't hope for the best and prepare for the worst. We prepare for everything and hope we're ready enough. As Veltar watched the human fleet transform from a collection of ships into a sophisticated evacuation machine, he realized that his people weren't just being rescued. They were witnessing the operational philosophy of a species that had turned survival into an art form. The evacuation began at dawn on Zephyr Prime's third day. Kira Velthane pressed her young daughter closer as they approached the massive human transport ship that dominated the sky above their settlement. The vessel, designated UHS Mercy, looked nothing like the elegant bioships she was accustomed to seeing. Its angular hull plates and external machinery, gave it the appearance of a flying industrial complex. "Mama, are the humans really going to help us?" her daughter Scylla asked, her small voice barely audible over the rumble of atmospheric processors. "Yes, little star," Kira replied, though her own fears gnawed at her. Trusting their lives to an alien species they had never encountered seemed like madness. But the alternative was certain death. The human processing station had been erected overnight, a prefabricated structure that efficiently channeled thousands of Zephyrians through medical checks, documentation, and boarding assignments. Kira was amazed by how smoothly the operation ran despite handling species with completely different physiological needs. A human in medical uniform approached their family group. He was shorter than most Zephyrians, with dark skin and kind eyes behind protective eyewear. His translator badge identified him as Dr. James Okafor. "Good morning," he said in accented but clear Zephyrian. "I'm here to make sure you and your daughter are healthy for travel. May I scan you with this device?" He held up a small, non-threatening instrument that hummed softly. Kira nodded, and the doctor passed it over both her and Scylla. "Excellent health, both of you," Dr. Okafor announced. "Mrs. Velthane, I see in your file that Scylla has a calcium deficiency. This is common during rapid growth phases. We've prepared dietary supplements specifically for young Zephyrians. She'll receive them with every meal during the journey." Kira stared at him in amazement. "Doctor, how could you possibly know about Zephyrian growth nutrition?" "We only met your species days ago," Dr. Okafor smiled. "Ma'am, we have 17 xenobiologists aboard this ship alone. They've been working around the clock since we received your biological data. We've also consulted with Zephyrian medical experts to ensure we understand your needs correctly." He handed her a small data pad. "This contains information about human ship procedures, meal schedules, emergency protocols, and entertainment options for the journey. Everything has been translated into Zephyrian script." As they moved toward the boarding ramp, Scylla tugged on her mother's arm. "Mama, look at all the different people." Kira followed her daughter's gaze and gasped. The human crew was more diverse than she had imagined possible. Humans with different skin colors, body types, and even what appeared to be cybernetic enhancements worked together seamlessly. Some wore patches indicating different homeworlds and colony origins. A human with pale skin and bright blue hair approached them at the boarding checkpoint. Her uniform identified her as Navigation Specialist Chen. "Welcome aboard the UHS Mercy," she said warmly. "I'm Lieutenant Chen, and I'll be your family's liaison during the journey. If you have any questions or concerns, day or night, you can contact me through your cabin's communication system." She knelt down to Scylla's level. "And you must be Scylla. I have a daughter about your age back on New Terra. Would you like to see pictures of her?" Scylla nodded eagerly, and Lieutenant Chen activated a small holographic display showing a human child playing in what appeared to be an alien garden filled with both Earth and non-Earth plants. "Her name is May, and she loves to collect rocks from different worlds," Chen explained. "I bet she'd love to meet you and hear about Zephyr Prime." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Kira marveled at the modifications the humans had made. The atmospheric composition felt perfect for Zephyrian physiology. The lighting had been adjusted to wavelengths that didn't strain their eyes. Even the corridor walls had been covered with organic materials that felt pleasant to their sensitive skin. Their assigned cabin was small but functional, with sleeping alcoves designed specifically for Zephyrian body structure. A small window looked out onto space where other human ships moved in perfect formation around them. "The journey to your new world will take approximately 93 days, Lieutenant Chen explained. "We've prepared educational programs about your destination, language lessons if you're interested in learning human standard, and various entertainment options. There's also a community center where families can gather and children can play together." That evening, Kira attended a briefing in the ship's main auditorium. Captain Sarah Rodriguez stood before an audience of nearly 20,000 Zephyrians, her translator working flawlessly to convert her words into their native language. "I want to address some concerns that have been raised," Captain Rodriguez began. "First, many of you are wondering why humans would undertake such an expensive and dangerous operation to help strangers. The answer is simple: because you needed help and we could provide it." She gestured to a holographic display showing the human fleet. "Second, some of you worry that we expect payment or servitude in return. Let me be clear, you owe us nothing. When we reach your new world, You will be free to establish your own government, your own society, your own future. We ask only that you remember this kindness and perhaps extend it to others who may need help someday." A Zephyrian elder in the audience raised his hand. "Captain, your people have invested enormous resources in our rescue. How do you justify this expense to your government?" Captain Rodriguez smiled. "Sir, our government didn't order this operation. When news of your crisis reached Earth, civilian organizations began organizing relief efforts within hours. Shipping companies volunteered their vessels. Military crews took leave to participate. Corporate sponsors provided supplies and equipment. This isn't a government operation, it's a human operation." Another voice called out, "But surely you must want something in return. Technology, resources, labor? We want you to survive and thrive," Rodriguez replied simply. "Humans have a saying, today you, tomorrow me. We help you today because we hope someone would help us if our positions were reversed. It's not a transaction, it's civilization." After the briefing, Kira found herself in the ship's observation lounge, watching the stars stream past through the massive, transparent aluminum windows. Her daughter played with other Zephyrian children in an adjacent area, their laughter a welcome sound after weeks of fear. Lieutenant Chen approached with 2 cups of what smelled like Zephyrian tea. "I thought you might like this," she said, offering a cup. "Our food synthesizers have been programmed with traditional Zephyrian recipes." Kira accepted the tea gratefully. It tasted exactly like the blend her grandmother had made. "Lieutenant, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "You have your own family, your own world, your own concerns. Why did you volunteer for this mission?" Chen was quiet for a moment, watching the children play. "Because I have a daughter, and I can imagine how terrified I would be if she was in danger and I couldn't save her. Because I've seen what humans can accomplish when we work together for good instead of profit or power. And because someday when my May is grown up, I want her to live in a galaxy where people help each other." She paused, then smiled. "Also because this is the kind of problem that makes humans excited. We're really good at impossible logistics. It's like a puzzle that saves lives instead of just making money." As Kira watched her daughter play with children from a dozen different Zephyrian settlements, all of them safe aboard a ship crewed by aliens who had voluntarily traveled across the galaxy to help them, she began to understand something profound about the human species. They weren't just rescuing the Zephyrians. They were demonstrating a completely different way of thinking about civilization itself. Commander Thexal of the Hegemony Enforcement Division watched the human evacuation fleet through his ship's sensors, his forearms crossed in mounting frustration. The massive operation unfolding around Zephyr Prime represented everything that was wrong with the galaxy's current power structure. "Navigation, confirm our position," he ordered his tactical officer. 3 light hours from the Zephyrian system, sir. We remain undetected by the human fleet." Thexal studied the tactical display showing hundreds of human vessels working in perfect coordination. The sight offended his sense of proper order. The humans had completely bypassed the Galactic Council's authority, mounting an unauthorized operation in sovereign space without diplomatic clearance or proper oversight. "Communications. Open a secure channel to Hegemony Command," he commanded. The holographic display activated, showing Fleet Admiral Cordthane, whose silver skin gleamed under the command center's lighting. "Commander Thexal, report on the situation." "Admiral, the humans have deployed approximately 400 vessels to the Zephyrian system. They appear to be conducting a complete planetary evacuation without Council authorization. The scale suggests they possess far greater military capabilities than our intelligence estimates indicated." Admiral Cordthane's expression darkened.
400 vessels.
"Our latest assessment showed human space assets at no more than 50 major ships. Sir, either our intelligence was catastrophically wrong, or the humans have been concealing their true capabilities. The logistics coordination alone suggests sophisticated command and control systems. These are not the barely spacefaring primitives described in our reports." The Admiral leaned forward. "Commander, the Hegemony has spent considerable resources positioning ourselves as the galaxy's primary crisis response force. If a recently emerged species can mount operations of this magnitude, it undermines our entire strategic position." Thexal understood the implications. The Hegemony maintained power by being indispensable during emergencies. Client species paid substantial tributes in exchange for protection and disaster relief. If humans could provide the same services without demanding submission, it threatened the entire foundation of Hegemony influence. What are your orders, sir? Thexal asked. Monitor and document everything. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Also, begin transmitting demands for immediate council review of this unauthorized operation. The humans must be held accountable for violating established protocols. After the communication ended, Thexal turned to his intelligence officer. Lieutenant Kexvar, what can you tell me about human military doctrine? The younger officer consulted his datapad nervously. Sir, our information is limited. Previous encounters suggest they favor overwhelming force and rapid deployment. The Cathari incident showed they're willing to completely destroy threats rather than negotiate. However, this operation appears to be purely humanitarian. Nothing is purely humanitarian. Thexal replied coldly. There's always an agenda. Money, territory, influence, resources. The humans are positioning themselves as galactic saviors for a reason. Lieutenant Kexvar hesitated. Sir, what if they're simply helping because they can? Thexal's forearms gestured dismissively. Lieutenant, advanced civilizations don't spend enormous resources without expecting returns. The humans are either incredibly naive, which seems unlikely given their rapid expansion, or they're playing a much deeper game than we understand. Over the following days, Thexal's surveillance teams documented the human operation with growing unease. The evacuation proceeded with mechanical efficiency that rivaled hegemony military exercises. More troubling were the intercepted communications showing human crews working without any apparent hierarchy of species, treating Zephyrians as equals rather than refugees. Sir, Lieutenant Kexvar reported during the daily briefing, we've identified something unusual about the human fleet composition. Many of the vessels appear to be civilian ships with minimal military modifications. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even research vessels have been pressed into service. Civilian ships conducting military-scale operations? Thexal mused. That suggests either remarkable desperation or extraordinary social cohesion. There's more, sir. We've detected ships from at least 40 different human colonies participating in the evacuation. The coordination required to organize such a response across multiple star systems would normally take months of planning. Thexal felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. The implications were staggering. If humans could mobilize their entire civilization within days for humanitarian purposes, what could they accomplish if they perceived a military threat? The answer came sooner than expected. Commander, his communications officer called urgently. Priority transmission from Human Fleet Command. They're addressing us directly. Thexal straightened in surprise. The humans weren't supposed to know about his surveillance operation. On screen, the hologram showed a human female in military uniform, her expression stern but not hostile. Her rank insignia identified her as Admiral Harrison, Commander Thexal of the hegemony vessel Dominion. She began, speaking perfect hegemony standard. This is Admiral Catherine Harrison, commanding the human evacuation fleet. We're aware of your surveillance operation and would like to request a meeting. Thexal exchanged glances with his bridge crew. How could the humans have detected his stealth-configured ship? Admiral Harrison, he replied carefully. The hegemony is conducting routine patrol operations in neutral space. We have no hostile intentions toward your humanitarian mission. Harrison smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Commander, we've been tracking your ship since you arrived. Your stealth systems are impressive, but they're not invisible to our sensors. We'd like to discuss the situation before there are any misunderstandings. The casual mention of tracking capabilities sent alarm signals through Thexal's tactical assessments. Hegemony stealth technology was considered the most advanced in known space. What sort of discussion did you have in mind? Thexal asked. The kind where we explain what we're doing here and why, and you explain whether the hegemony intends to interfere with refugee evacuation operations. Harrison replied bluntly. Thexal realized he was facing a choice that could have significant consequences for hegemony strategic planning. Backing down would show weakness, but escalating could reveal human capabilities that might be better discovered gradually. Very well, Admiral. I will meet with you under standard diplomatic protocols. Harrison nodded. Excellent. We'll send a shuttle to your coordinates. And Commander? Bring your intelligence officer. He's asked some very good questions during your surveillance operation, and I think he deserves some answers. The communication ended, leaving Thexal staring at the blank hologram. The humans had been monitoring his own intelligence gathering. They knew about Lieutenant Kexavar's questions. They were demonstrating capabilities that fundamentally challenged every assumption about their technological and organizational development. "Lieutenant," he said slowly, "prepare for diplomatic contact and begin composing a priority report to Hegemony Command. I believe we've significantly underestimated what we're dealing with." As he watched the human evacuation fleet continue its methodical work of saving 400 million lives, Texel began to understand that the galaxy's power structure was about to change dramatically. The humans weren't just rescuing the Zephyrians, they were announcing their arrival as a major galactic force, and they were doing it by demonstrating capabilities that made the Hegemony's vaunted crisis response systems look primitive by comparison. The most unsettling part was that they seemed to be doing it all out of simple decency. The meeting between Admiral Harrison and Commander Thexol took place aboard the UHS Concordia in a conference room that had been hastily modified for multi-species use. The human ship's interior was as utilitarian as its exterior, with exposed conduits and functional lighting that served purpose over aesthetics. Thexol entered with Lieutenant Kexavar, both wearing formal Hegemony diplomatic uniforms. They were greeted by Admiral Harrison and a human female introduced as Dr. Elizabeth Santos, their xenocultural specialist. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting," Harrison began without ceremony. "I'll be direct, Commander. We know the Hegemony has been evaluating our evacuation operation, and we suspect you have concerns about our methods and intentions." Thexel settled into a chair designed for his four-armed physiology, noting that the humans had somehow acquired detailed information about Hegemony anatomy. "Admiral, the Hegemony is naturally interested in any large-scale military operation conducted without proper galactic oversight. Your fleet represents a significant deployment of force in civilian space. You consider refugee evacuation a military operation?" Dr. Santos asked, her tone genuinely curious rather than confrontational. "Any deployment of 400 vessels with military escorts constitutes a military operation," Lieutenant Kexvar replied. "The scale alone represents a potential threat to regional stability." Harrison activated a holographic display showing the human fleet deployment. "Commander, let me show you something that might clarify our methods." The display highlighted different categories of vessels. These green indicators are civilian transports, mostly converted cargo haulers and passenger ships. The blue indicators are medical vessels and support craft. The red indicators are our military escorts. Thexol studied the display with growing surprise. "Only 37 military vessels and a fleet of over 400? "Correct. Our doctrine emphasizes civilian infrastructure for humanitarian operations. Military assets are present solely for protection against pirates or other hostile forces." Dr. Santos leaned forward. "Commander, may I ask about Hegemony evacuation protocols? How would your people have approached this situation?" Thexol exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Kexavar. "Standard procedure would involve a careful assessment period to determine the most strategically valuable populations for evacuation. Priority would be given to individuals with essential skills, genetic diversity considerations, and political leadership. We estimate that approximately 60 million high-value individuals could be evacuated using available Hegemony resources." "And the remaining 340 million?" Harrison asked quietly. "Would unfortunately be lost," Thexol admitted. "Large-scale evacuation of entire populations is logistically impossible using conventional methods." Dr. Santos nodded thoughtfully. "That's exactly what the Galactic Council concluded. Which raises an interesting question. How are humans accomplishing what the combined resources of 37 civilizations considered impossible?" Lieutenant Kexvar spoke up. "If I may ask, Admiral, what is the secret to your logistics capabilities? The coordination required for this operation should take months of preparation." Harrison smiled. "Lieutenant, the secret is that we practice impossible things regularly. Every human colony world has mandatory emergency drills. Every ship in our fleet trains for disaster response. Every citizen knows basic evacuation procedures. We don't hope emergencies won't happen. We assume they will and prepare accordingly." She gestured to another display showing human space. 3 years ago, we evacuated the entire Kepler 442 system when their star went nova. 2 years ago, we relocated 50 million colonists from the Vega mining worlds when harvester drones attacked. Last year, we moved every research station out of the Centauri Nebula when that reality distortion appeared. Thexol stared at the data. You've conducted 3 major evacuation operations in 3 years? Among other things, yes. We've also dealt with plague outbreaks, asteroid impacts, hostile first contacts, and various natural disasters. Emergency response is a core competency of human civilization. Dr. Santos added, Commander, humans evolved on a planet that regularly tried to kill them. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, predators, diseases. Our entire species developed around the concept of mutual aid during emergencies. When one community was threatened, others provided assistance automatically. But the resource costs, Lieutenant HFY protested. How do you justify such enormous expenditures for non-citizens? Harrison's expression grew serious. Lieutenant, let me tell you about human economic theory. We discovered long ago that helping others survive and prosper creates wealth, not destroys it. Every Zephyrian life we save represents potential innovation, art, culture, trade, and collaboration. The refugees aren't a burden. They're an investment in galactic civilization. She activated another display showing economic projections. Conservative estimates suggest that integrating healthy Zephyrian populations into human space will generate enormous benefits. Their biomanipulation technologies could revolutionize medicine. Their crystal matrix sciences could advance computing. Their artistic traditions could enrich human culture. We're not spending money on this operation, we're investing in it. Thexal felt his worldview shifting uncomfortably. Hegemony doctrine emphasized resource control and careful cost-benefit analysis. The idea of massive expenditures based on potential future returns seemed impossibly naive. Admiral, he said carefully, what prevents other species from exploiting such generosity? Surely some civilizations would take advantage of unconditional assistance. Dr. Santos and Admiral Harrison exchanged a look that seemed to communicate volumes. Commander, Harrison said slowly, humans have encountered exploitative behavior before. Our response tends to be educational. Educational? We help once out of kindness, Dr. Santos explained. If someone tries to exploit that kindness, we help them understand why that's a poor decision. Humans can be very patient teachers when necessary. The mild tone didn't disguise the underlying threat. Thexal realized he was dealing with a species that combined apparently unlimited generosity with equally unlimited capacity for retaliation. I see, he said quietly. And how does the hegemony fit into human strategic thinking? Harrison considered the question.
Honestly?
We hope you don't fit into it at all. We prefer cooperation to competition, trade to conquest, aid to tribute. If the hegemony wants to work with us on humanitarian operations, we're interested. If you want to interfere with refugee evacuations or threaten civilian populations, you'll discover why we're called Deathworlders. Lieutenant HFY leaned forward. Admiral, may I ask a hypothetical question? If the hegemony were facing a similar crisis to the Zephyrians, would humans provide the same assistance? Harrison didn't hesitate. Yes, every sapient life has value regardless of politics or past conflicts. We would help the hegemony, the Galactic Council, or even enemies if they needed emergency assistance. Even after learning that hegemony policy involves selective evacuation based on strategic value, HFY pressed. Especially then, Dr. Santos replied. We believe in leading by example. If we show that complete evacuation is possible, maybe other civilizations will adopt similar policies. Thexal stood slowly, his forearms moving in a gesture of formal acknowledgement. Admiral Dr. Santos, this has been enlightening. I believe I need to revise my initial assessment of human intentions and capabilities. Harrison rose as well. Commander, we hope this marks the beginning of better understanding between our peoples. The galaxy is large enough for multiple approaches to civilization, as long as those approaches don't involve letting people die when we could save them. As Thexal and Lieutenant HFY returned to their ship, the young officer was unusually quiet. Sir, he finally said, what will you tell Hegemony Command? Thexal looked back at the human fleet, still working methodically to save every single Zephyrian life. The truth, Lieutenant, that we've encountered a civilization that makes our most advanced capabilities look primitive, and they're using those capabilities to save lives rather than conquer territory. He paused, watching a human transport ship carefully dock with a Zephyrian refugee station. And that if we're wise, we'll learn from their example before they decide we need more direct education. 6 months after the evacuation of Zephyr Prime, Ambassador Cathavar stood in the observation deck of New Haven Station, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on the orbital habitat that would serve as the temporary capital of the Zephyrian people. Below them, the green and blue world of Kepler 4522c stretched toward the horizon, its continents already showing the beginnings of Zephyrian settlements. "The terraforming is proceeding ahead of schedule," reported Chief Engineer Martinez, a human whose weathered hand spoke of decades working in space. "Your people's biomanipulation technologies have accelerated the atmospheric processing by at least 2 years." Cathavar nodded, still marveling at the efficiency of human Zephyrian cooperation. "Chief Martinez, I wanted to thank you personally. The integration has been smoother than anyone dared hope." Martinez smiled, adjusting his tool belt. "Ma'am, working with Zephyrian biotechnology has been the highlight of my career. Your crystal matrix computers have revolutionized our construction logistics. It's been a fair trade." Through the transparent aluminum windows, Cathavar could see the fruits of that cooperation. Hybrid buildings that combined human structural engineering with Zephyrian bioarchitecture dotted the landscape. Agricultural zones where earth crops grew alongside Zephyrian food plants. Research facilities where mixed human-Zephyrian teams worked on projects that neither species could have accomplished alone. "Ambassador," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Admiral Harrison approaching, her uniform showing the wear of someone who had been personally overseeing refugee integration for months. "Admiral, I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you had returned to Sol Space." Harrison gestured toward the planet below. "I wanted to see how things were progressing. Besides, we received some interesting news from the Galactic Council that I thought you should hear directly." She activated a portable holographic projector, displaying the seal of the Galactic Council. The image of Speaker Mordain appeared, his forearms spread in formal greeting. "This is an official statement from the Galactic Council regarding the Zephyrian evacuation operation," Mordain's recorded voice announced. "After extensive review, the Council acknowledges that the human-led evacuation of Zephyr Prime represents the most successful humanitarian operation in recorded galactic history. The complete preservation of Zephyrian civilization, including their cultural artifacts, biological samples, and population genetics, exceeds all previous emergency response benchmarks." The recording continued. "The Council formally requests that human representatives attend the next full session to discuss establishment of formal diplomatic relations and potential participation in Council humanitarian protocols." Admiral Harrison paused the recording. "Ambassador, they're essentially asking us to join the Galactic Council as the primary emergency response force." Cathavar felt her throat sacs inflate with excitement. "Admiral, this is unprecedented. The Council has never invited a non-member species to participate in operational planning." "There's more," Harrison said, restarting the recording. Speaker Mordain's image became more serious. "Additionally, the Council has received formal requests from 17 member civilizations asking for human assistance with various crisis scenarios. The Andromedans are requesting evacuation planning for 3 worlds threatened by stellar collapse. The Mineral Consortium wants help with mining colony disasters. Even the Hegemony has submitted preliminary requests for consultation on emergency logistics." The recording ended, leaving the observation deck in contemplative silence. 17 civilizations, Cathavar mused. "Admiral, your people have transformed galactic thinking about crisis response in less than a year." Harrison looked uncomfortable. "Ambassador, that's actually what concerns me. We never intended to become the galaxy's emergency service. Humans help because we can, not because we want to control galactic politics." Chief Engineer Martinez spoke up. "With respect, Admiral, maybe that's exactly why you should do it. Every other major power treats crisis response as a way to gain influence or extract tribute. Humans do it because it's right." Cathavar nodded enthusiastically. "Chief Martinez is correct. The galaxy needs someone who responds to emergencies based on need, rather than profit margins or strategic advantage." Admiral Harrison walked to the window, looking down at the thriving Zephyrian settlements below. "What do you think, Ambassador? You've seen both sides now. Should humans take on formal responsibility for galactic emergency response?" Cathavar considered the question carefully. She had witnessed the human evacuation operation from both desperate refugee and grateful survivor perspectives. She had seen how human crews treated every Zephyrian life as equally valuable. Regardless of social status or usefulness, she had watched human and Zephyrian children playing together in the settlement schools below. "Admiral," she said slowly, "may I tell you what I observed during our evacuation, please? When my people boarded your ships, we expected to be treated as refugees, charity cases, burdens to be endured until we could be safely deposited somewhere. Instead, your crews treated us as guests, as equals, as potential friends and colleagues." She gestured toward the planet below. "Your engineers didn't just help us build shelters. They collaborated with our architects to create something better than either species could have designed alone. Your doctors didn't just treat our medical needs. They learned from our biomanipulation techniques to improve their own healing capabilities. Your children didn't just tolerate our children. They formed friendships that will last for generations." Admiral Harrison listened intently as Kethvar continued. "That is why humans should accept the Council's invitation. Not because you want power or influence, but because you've demonstrated something the galaxy has never seen before. The ability to help without seeking to control." Chief Engineer Martinez nodded agreement. "The ambassador's right, Admiral. Look at what we've accomplished here in 6 months. Human Zephyrian medical advances that could save millions of lives, agricultural techniques that could end food shortages, construction methods that could house entire populations safely and efficiently." He paused, looking out at the bustling settlements. "We're not just helping the Zephyrians rebuild, we're proving that different species can work together as equals. That's a lesson the galaxy needs to learn." Admiral Harrison was quiet for a long moment, then activated her communication implant. Priority connection to Earth Command. The hologram showed a familiar face. President Chen, her expression serious but hopeful. "Admiral Harrison," the president said, "I assume you're calling about the Galactic Council's invitation?" "Yes, Madam President. I wanted to provide my assessment from the field before Earth makes any decisions." President Chen leaned forward.
Your recommendation?
Admiral Harrison looked once more at the thriving world below, where human and Zephyrian families were building a new civilization together. "Madam President, I recommend we accept. But with conditions." "What conditions?" "First, we maintain our policy of helping everyone who needs it, regardless of politics or ability to pay. Second, we insist on transparent operations with full documentation of all emergency responses. Third, we reserve the right to act unilaterally if the Council becomes deadlocked during genuine emergencies." President Chen smiled. "In other words, we'll join the Council, but we won't let them bureaucratize human compassion." "Exactly," the President nodded. "I'll present your recommendation to the Global Assembly, but I suspect they'll agree. The Zephyrian operation has shown us what we're capable of when we work together." After the communication ended, the three of them stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky above New Zephyria in brilliant colors. "Admiral," Kethvar said quietly, "there's something I want you to know. When I first approached your people, I thought I was asking for charity. I realize now that I was actually offering humans something far more valuable." "What's that?" Harrison asked. "The opportunity to show the galaxy what civilization looks like when it's built on mutual aid instead of mutual exploitation." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Admiral Harrison realized that the Zephyrian evacuation had been just the beginning. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not with conquest or threats, but with an outstretched hand. Now they would discover whether the rest of the galaxy was ready to accept that kind of civilization. Below them, human and Zephyrian children played together in the growing dusk, their laughter carrying on the wind like a promise of the future they were building together.